The studio lights burned white-hot, bouncing off polished desks and the glint in Sean Hannity's eyes. His voice sliced through the tension like a blade, sharp, rehearsed, dripping with that trademark blend of confidence and contempt. "So tell me, Congresswoman, do you even understand how the economy works, or are we just doing slogans tonight?" The words hung heavy, almost smug. His co-host chuckled under his breath. The crowd murmured. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded, her face unreadable, the calm at the center of a storm. For a long second, she let the silence do the talking. Hannity leaned forward, sensing victory. "Cat, got your tongue," he prodded, his smirk widening, the studio cameras zooming in to capture what he thought would be another viral humiliation. But then, she spoke. Just one line, one calm, devastating sentence that detonated like thunder in a cathedral. "You mistake noise for knowledge, Sean, and I don't do either." Silence. The sound engineers froze. Hannity blinked twice, lips parting but no sound emerging. His co-host's grin vanished, replaced by a stunned, almost childlike confusion. In the control room, someone whispered, "Did she just say that?" The audience at home didn't breathe. Online, comment threads lit up like fireworks. Hashtags were already forming. #Crockett line, #mic drop on live TV. The replay looped across screens, millions watching, her eyes unshaken, unbothered, unmoved, while Hannity's face betrayed something rare for him. Shock. For years, he had built a fortress of dominance, powered by interruptions and swagger. But in one heartbeat, it cracked. The power flipped, his rhythm broke, and in that silence, the weight of every dismissed voice, every talked-over guest, seemed to echo through the screen. The camera panned slowly to his co-host, once laughing, now still, eyes darting between them as if searching for the script that suddenly didn't exist. And then, before anyone could fill the silence, the feed cut to commercial. The world watching felt it, that strange, electric mix of disbelief and vindication. Something real had just happened. Cut to black. Voiceover. That's when the unthinkable happened on live TV. But to understand why this one sentence hit so hard, we need to go back to the beginning. 1 week before the now infamous broadcast, the tension was already brewing. Hannity's monologue opened with his signature grin, confident, dismissive, a smirk aimed straight into the camera. "Here we go again," he said, rolling his eyes. "Another loud liberal who doesn't know the facts, but sure loves to yell about them." On-screen graphics flashed. Crockett chaos? The studio audience laughed. Clips of Jasmine Crockett speaking passionately in a congressional hearing were chopped, distorted, punctuated with mock applause and sarcastic commentary. To his audience, it was routine. Just another night of political theater. But beneath the laughter, something was shifting. The clip spread beyond his base, clipped and reposted by viewers who didn't find it funny. "Who is she?" one tweet asked. "Because she just got disrespected on national TV." Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Jasmine Crockett sat in her office long after the lights had dimmed. The Capitol corridors were quiet now, her laptop still glowing. On her screen, the clip played in silence, Hannity's words echoing faintly from the speakers. She watched once, twice, then closed the window. There was no anger in her expression. Just thought. Calculation. She'd dealt with louder voices before: prosecutors, pundits, power players. She knew the pattern, the interruption, the framing, the twist. Hannity wasn't new. He was a symbol of the showman who mistakes volume for vision. In the quiet, she rehearsed not talking points, but composure. Every inhale deliberate, every pause measured. She wasn't preparing for a fight. She was preparing for a moment. Producers from the network called her twice that week, trying to pin down the tone of the segment. She gave nothing away. "I'll be ready," she said simply. The night before the show, newsrooms were buzzing. Hannity teased the segment again on air. "Tomorrow," he promised his viewers, "we're sitting down with Representative Jasmine Crockett and we'll see if she can back up her talk." His co-host laughed. "Hope she brought a helmet." But Crockett wasn't planning to duck. She was planning to land a truth. Backstage, minutes before airtime, a makeup artist dabbed powder under her eyes. The buzz of studio lights hummed overhead. Producers whispered cues through earpieces. Hannity's voice echoed faintly from the next room, rehearsing his intro, calibrating his lines. Crockett's team stood off to the side, nervous energy in the air. One aide muttered, "They're going to try to ambush you." She looked up, calm as still water. "Then they're going to learn something new about stillness." In the control room, a producer leaned to another. "She's trending already. Hashtag Crockett challenge. Her supporters are waiting for this." The segment clock ticked closer. Cameras adjusted. Hannity straightened his papers with the air of a man certain of the outcome. For him, it was just another chance to perform to score the next viral confrontation, to reinforce the myth of his invincibility. But for her, this was personal only in the most public way. It wasn't about him. It was about every underestimated voice, every dismissed woman told she didn't belong in the room. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Hannity, his voice boomed. Tonight, a very special guest joins us. Somewhere deep in the studio, a quiet confidence settled. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, eyes locked on the lens, ready not to argue but to reveal. And as the first question left Hannity's lips, no one, not even his co-host, could have predicted how quickly control would slip away. For 2 decades, Sean Hannity had ruled his studio like a well-lit kingdom. Every night, the same choreography, lights dimming, patriotic graphics swirling, theme music thundering like a fanfare announcing the arrival of a general. He wasn't just a host, he was the master of a ritual. The ritual of control. Producers called it the Hannity rhythm. Each segment timed to the second, every interruption rehearsed, every smile calibrated for dominance. His desk was positioned slightly higher than his guests, a subtle tilt of power that the camera never betrayed. The air smelled faintly of ozone and stage nerves. Assistants hustled behind the cameras, whispering cues. A red tally light blinked on. And then, the transformation began. The pre-show chatter evaporated. Hannity's posture stiffened, his eyes sharpened, his voice found that familiar cadence, assertive, slightly mocking, like a teacher calling on a student he didn't expect to know the answer. "Welcome to Hannity, the show where facts still matter," he'd say, grinning into the lens, daring anyone to challenge him. Inside his world, conversation wasn't dialogue, it was theater. Guests weren't equals, they were props. He interrupted not to clarify, but to corral. He raised his volume just as opponents gathered momentum, flooding the air with certainty before doubt could breathe. And the audience, millions at home, rewarded it. Applause buttons lit up, laughter swelled at his punchlines. In this studio, sound was power. Silence was surrender. He loved to bait them, let a guest talk for 10 seconds, then pounce. Hold on, that's not what the numbers say," he'd interject, even when the numbers weren't the point. Strawmen were his weapon of choice. Turn a statement into a slogan, then tear it apart like a magician revealing his own trick, confident the crowd would still cheer. The walls of the studio seemed to echo his certainty. From the teleprompter to the control booth, everyone knew their place. Hannity was the axis. The show revolved around his timing, his smirk, his rhythm. The ratings confirmed the myth. For years, he had been untouchable, a fixture of American cable news. Presidents had called in for favors. Senators had sought his approval. His interviews weren't conversations, they were coronations of his own worldview. Each interruption reinforced the hierarchy. His word above theirs, his confidence above doubt. And yet, behind the spectacle, there was something more mechanical, the hum of routine, the predictable comfort of control. Producers smirked when guests tried to push back, they'd seen it all before. The countdown clock ticked in red digits beside the camera. The floor manager whispered, 30 seconds to break. It was a dance, and Hannity never missed a step. His audience adored the performance because it affirmed what they already believed. That the loudest voice
He was the
must be
avatar
the
of their
truest.
defiance, the nightly reassurance that nothing outside the bubble could truly threaten them. And in that confidence, he had grown complacent. When he mocked Jasmine Crockett a week earlier, it wasn't malice, it was instinct. She was just another target, another guest to overtalk, another face to flatten beneath a barrage of smirking certainty. He didn't study her background. He didn't care. He'd faced senators, CEOs, activists, and always walked away with the same headline: Hannity destroys another liberal. In the green room that night, while makeup artists dabbed powder across his forehead, he joked with the crew. "This'll be quick," he said, chuckling. "She'll crumble by minute 3. Laughter followed him to the set, cameras rolled. The earpiece crackled. Producers counted down 5, 4, 3. The lights flared brighter than usual, bouncing off glass and chrome. He straightened his papers, his voice dropping into that well-practiced tone of dominance. "Congresswoman, welcome to Hannity. Let's get right into it." He leaned forward, ready to perform the ritual once more. The lion, the den, the sacrifice. His hand hovered near his notes, though he hardly needed them, but in the booth, one intern watching through the monitor noticed something different. Crockett wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't defensive. She was waiting utterly still, utterly composed. For the first time in years, the air inside the studio felt unpredictable, and as Hannity smiled for the camera, unaware, his empire of certainty waited to be tested, because what happens when someone walks into that arena, completely unafraid, didn't always listen. But she also learned how to make it listen. Her voice, steady and exact, had power not because it was loud, but because it was rooted in something unshakable, truth earned through struggle. In those early days, she defended teenagers accused of crimes they didn't understand, mothers balancing 3 jobs and 1 bad decision, men who had lost everything but still wanted to tell their story. She remembered every face, every sigh when the gavel fell. Justice wasn't an abstract word for her, it was something she chased through long nights and hostile cross-examinations. When she spoke in court, she didn't perform, she revealed. Every pause, every question carried years of seeing what the system ignored. And somewhere in that rhythm, she found her power, calm, deliberate, unstoppable. Her reputation grew quietly, a defender who refused to flinch. Local reporters began to notice. Community leaders began to call. The courtroom evolved into a platform, and the platform became a pulpit for something bigger, the belief that the voiceless deserve volume. Then came politics, reluctantly at first. She ran for state office not because she wanted to climb, but because she was tired of watching people she defended face the same cycles of silence. Campaign funds were scarce, volunteers exhausted, but her words struck chords. "They can outspend me," she told a crowd one sweltering summer evening, "but they can't outwork truth." She won barely. And from that moment, every speech, every vote, every confrontation became another verse in a larger story. By the time she arrived in Congress, she was no stranger to being underestimated. Male colleagues interrupted her mid-sentence, commentators labeled her fiery instead of focused. Yet every time they tried to talk over her, she let them. And when the room fell silent, she spoke not louder, just clearer. Her first viral moment came during a congressional hearing. A senior official tried to dodge a question about accountability. She leaned in, eyes unwavering, and asked, "So if it isn't your responsibility, whose is it?" The clip exploded online. Millions watched not just because of what she said, but how she said it, calm, composed, anchored. It wasn't anger. It was certainty. That moment didn't make her a celebrity, it made her a mirror. Viewers saw in her the poise they wished they could summon, the quiet defiance of someone who refused to be shaken by noise. Immigrants saw a daughter of the South speaking for the overlooked. Young women saw strength without theatrics. Older viewers saw honesty they thought had vanished from public life. Even her critics, grudgingly, began to admit she was different. She didn't rely on slogans or theatrics. Her power was in restraint, a composure that made every interruption feel smaller. Outside the Capitol, she still visited community centers, meeting students who quoted her hearing clips back to her. One girl, shy and trembling, told her, "I want to talk like you one day, calm, even when they're yelling." Jasmine smiled. "Then you already know how to win," she said. Through every victory, she carried a kind of stillness that didn't come from comfort but from having survived noise louder than any pundits. So when the invitation came from Hannity's team, she didn't see it as a trap. She saw it as a test not of her knowledge, but of her presence. The night before the show, she called her mother. They spoke about everything except politics. "Just be you," her mother said softly. "The rest will take care of itself." As dawn broke, Jasmine looked out over Washington, the city washed in pale gold light. She thought about the years behind her, the courtroom benches, the long drives between campaign stops, the moments when faith was all she had left. It all led here, the camera lights, the smirk, the noise, none of it scared her. She'd faced real fear before. So when Hannity tried to rattle her, he didn't realize she'd faced far worse. Systemic bias in the justice system. "But isn't it true, Sean, what I've said?" Hold on, we'll get there," he interrupted instantly, voice rising half an octave. Isn't it true that crime in your district has gone up under your party's policies? The rhythm was familiar: cut, deflect, dominate. But tonight, something in the air felt different. Crockett smiled faintly, not the defensive smile of a guest trying to appease, but the calm grin of someone who'd seen this trick before. I think your question skips a few facts, she said evenly. Her tone carried no heat, only precision. The crowd behind the cameras shifted, unsure whether to laugh or hold their breath. Hannity leaned forward, sensing the need to reassert control. Congresswoman, facts don't skip, people do. You're dodging. A soft chuckle escaped her lips. I'm not dodging, Sean. I'm just waiting for you to finish asking the question you actually want answered. The studio temperature seemed to shift. Producers exchanged glances through the glass. A whisper crackled in an earpiece, she's not breaking. He barreled on. Let's talk numbers. Your city's budget, Sean, she interjected gently, if I could finish one sentence, your viewers might actually learn something. The audience reacted a low ripple of surprise, a gasp disguised as laughter. The sound engineer hesitated, uncertain whether to mute the background noise. Hannity tried to talk over her again, but now it was obvious, his words were landing harder, thinner, less sure. Shot countershot, his face tightening, her expression serene. Each interruption chipped away not at her composure, but at his rhythm. Congresswoman, he said, raising his voice, you can't deny, I can, and I just did, she said calmly. Her reply wasn't sharp, it was surgical. And the calmness, that unbearable calmness, unsettled him more than any shout ever could. On social feeds across the country, the segment streamed in real time. Clips looped. Comments flooded in, she's unbothered. He looks rattled. Is he sweating? Crockett continued, unhurried. If you'd like to talk solutions instead of sound bites, I'm happy to do that. But shouting me down won't change the truth. The studio lights caught the edge of her expression, a mix of grace and unyielding steel. She looked less like a guest defending herself and more like a teacher watching a student run out of answers. Hannity shifted his papers, his laughter suddenly forced. All right, Congresswoman, let's not get dramatic. I'm not, she said softly. You are. It landed. The crowd fell silent. Even his co-host, seated just off camera, looked momentarily unsure whether to jump in or stay out of it. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer muttered, we're off script. Another whispered back, keep rolling. This is gold. For a flicker of a second, Hannity's mask slipped. His smile faltered. The familiar rhythm, his empire of noise, had met something it couldn't drown out. He straightened in his chair, forced the grin back onto his face. All right then, he said, voice tight, let's really get into it. But as he leaned forward, something reckless entered his tone, that sharp edge born of losing control. He'd built his career on pushing buttons, on knowing exactly where the line was, and now, live on air, in front of millions, he was about to cross it. For 20 minutes, Hannity had circled her like a veteran prizefighter, probing, taunting, talking over every sentence. Each interruption came quicker than the last, a storm of noise meant to break her rhythm. He laughed mid-question, raised his eyebrows, gestured to the camera as if the punchline was already written. Congresswoman, it sounds like you just don't understand basic economics, he said, dragging out each word as if addressing a child. Maybe Washington's a little over your head, huh? A ripple of laughter moved through the control booth. His co-host grinned. Hannity leaned back, satisfied. He could feel the familiar power returning, the thrill of dominance. This was his stage. His show. But then, silence. Crockett didn't rush to respond. She didn't even blink. The pause stretched long enough for the laughter to die in the walls. The air between them thickened, not with tension, but with anticipation. Viewers could feel it through the screen. Her hands remained folded. Her gaze steady. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, measured, almost gentle. You keep mistaking volume for victory, Sean, and it's getting embarrassing. For a second, no one moved. The sentence hung in the air like a bell strike, reverberating through the room, cutting through every ounce of his practiced confidence. Hannity's jaw tensed, his mouth opened, then closed again. The teleprompter scrolled past unnoticed. His co-host froze, eyes darting away from him. In the control booth, someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice replied, keep rolling. Don't cut. The silence on set felt deafening. Even the cameras seemed to lean in. The hum of equipment, the faint rustle of papers, all of it amplified, online, the moment detonated in real time. Within 30 seconds, clips began to surface. Screenshots. Reaction emojis. A user on X typed, "Did she just end Hannity live on air?" TikTok stitches followed slow-motion replays of her expression, synced to cinematic music. YouTube thumbnails appeared, the line that shut down Fox News. Back in the studio, Hannity's smirk faltered, his voice catching in his throat like a script that forgot its lines. For the first time, the rhythm wasn't his. He tried to laugh it off. Okay, so now you're insulting," she didn't interrupt. She just waited. And the waiting killed him. Every instinct told him to regain control, to flood the silence with noise. But his timing was gone. His charm curdled. The audience wasn't laughing anymore, they were watching her. Crockett leaned back, eyes steady. "You invited me here to talk, Sean. I assumed you wanted to hear something real." Her tone wasn't angry. It was disappointed. And that quiet, surgical disappointment was what cut deepest. The co-host tried to jump in, voice trembling slightly. "Well, Congresswoman, I think what Sean meant," but Hannity held up a hand, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. No, let her talk. Clearly, she's got the floor now." It was meant to sound sarcastic, but it came out brittle. The audience could feel it, the empire of arrogance cracking live, piece by piece. As she spoke again, her words flowed like calm water. "You asked about accountability. I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like facing hard truths, even when they don't fit your script." Cut to the viewers at home, living rooms glowing blue from the TV, families frozen mid-sentence, phones lighting up with notifications. Hashtags trended faster than the network could react. Hashtag volume is not victory. Hashtag Crockett versus Hannity. Hashtag embarrassing. Clips flooded every feed, one showing Hannity's stunned face, another zooming on her unshaken poise. A TikTok looped her line with a booming soundtrack, "You keep mistaking volume for victory," over the beat drop. Millions watched, shared, commented, "This is how you handle arrogance." She didn't raise her voice once. She just made history. The producers behind the glass scrambled. "Do we cut to break?" one asked. "Not yet," another said. "We're witnessing a moment." Hannity tried to pivot, forcing energy back into his tone. "Congresswoman, I think you're enjoying this a little too much." "I'm enjoying clarity," she replied softly. "It's rare here." He looked at his co-host for backup, but there was none. Even the co-host's expression said what the audience already felt. The show's balance had shifted. Crockett continued, her cadence unhurried, her voice threading truth through the air. "People tune in hoping to hear honesty. But all they get is theater. And I didn't come here for theater, Sean. I came for facts." The words landed one after another, not shouted, not embellished, just pure and deliberate. Across America, people replayed the moment again and again, as if testing whether it had really happened. Commentators reacted within minutes. On Instagram Live, influencers broke it down like a scene from a movie. "She flipped the power dynamic without raising her voice," one said. "It's masterclass composure." Back in the studio, the silence stretched again. Hannity smiled tightly, exhaling through his nose. "Well, Congresswoman, congratulations. You've gone viral." Her eyes didn't move from his. "That's your world, Sean. I'm just telling the truth." And just like that, the segment ended, not with an outro, not with applause, but with that final line echoing into the fade-out. The red light clicked off. The cameras powered down. Hannity leaned back, staring past the lens as though trying to find where the control had gone. His co-host cleared his throat. We'll be right back after the break." Cut to black. Outside the studio, phones were already buzzing. Network execs scrambled, social media teams firing off PR lines, while on the internet, the verdict was unanimous. The clip wasn't a debate, it was a shift. A single sentence that redefined what power looked like on camera. For years, he had dominated through interruption, through force. But in less than a minute, Jasmine Crockett had shown the world that composure could be louder than chaos, and as the clip hit 1 million views before the broadcast even ended, one truth became impossible to deny. Something seismic had just occurred in American television, but the aftermath would turn one viral moment into a political earthquake. By sunrise, the internet was on fire. What began as a late-night segment buried in cable TV's rotation had become the story of the day, the clip no one could stop replaying. Jasmine Crockett's calm takedown, her single devastating line, was everywhere. Every platform, every feed, every conversation, within hours, #Crockett clapback trended at #1 nationwide. A second tag #Hannity owned wasn't far behind. Memes exploded across social media, a split-screen image of Hannity's frozen face and Crockett's unbothered half-smile, a looping gif of her mouthing, "Volume for victory," with thunderous applause edited in. Someone even remixed it into a lo-fi beat titled "Volume is not equal to victory," Crockett edit, racking up millions of plays before noon. Clips flooded TikTok. A high school civics teacher posted, "Showing this to my class tomorrow, this is how you debate with dignity." A military veteran tweeted, "I've never seen someone dismantle arrogance so quietly." Underneath, thousands replied with American flag emojis and heart reactions. For once, the comments section felt like consensus, not chaos. News outlets couldn't keep up. CNN ran the headline, "Crockett's calm, the viral moment that stopped Hannity cold." MSNBC called it, "a rare moment of televised grace." Even Fox News producers, off the record, told reporters the control room had gone dead silent after her line. Late-night hosts jumped in. Trevor Noah quipped, "Somebody finally found the mute button on Hannity." The studio audience roared. By afternoon, the clip had crossed 10 million views on YouTube. Twitter analysts mapped its spread like a digital wildfire, from activists to journalists, then to celebrities. Actor Mark Ruffalo tweeted, "That's how you do it. Facts. Poise. No shouting." Lizzo posted the quote over a slow clap emoji. The wave wasn't just political, it was cultural. People were sharing it not for policy but for power, pride, and relief. In the middle of it all, Hannity's team scrambled. His producers released a statement, Sean was allowing his guest to fully express herself. The viral clip misrepresents the respectful debate that occurred. It was supposed to sound professional. Instead, it reeked of damage control. The internet pounced. "Respectful debate," one user wrote. "You mean the part where he talked over her every sentence?" Screenshots of his interruptions flooded replies. Hashtags only grew louder. The more they tried to spin it, the worse it got. Conservative pundits tweeted their support, but even among them, there was unease. A leaked email thread from network insiders revealed producers asking whether Hannity should take a break from live interviews. He didn't, but the suggestion alone told the story. The balance had shifted. Meanwhile, Crockett's numbers exploded. Her Instagram doubled overnight. New followers poured in: young women, immigrants, teachers, veterans, people who saw in her composure a kind of validation they hadn't realized they needed. "She stood her ground without losing her grace," one post read. "That's the America I believe in." Her inbox filled with thank you messages, stories of daughters watching the clip and feeling seen for the first time. A viral TikTok compilation stitched together fan reactions, a grandmother in Houston shaking her head proudly. A college student whispering, "That's my congresswoman." A veteran tearing up, saying, "That's courage without the noise." Commenters called it the quiet revolution of respect. Someone pinned the phrase. Within a day, it was printed on T-shirts. The story bled beyond politics. Morning shows debated its meaning. Was it a feminist moment? A generational shift? A sign that Americans were exhausted by loudness? Panelists nodded, talked over each other, ironically proving her point. One columnist wrote, "In 20 years of political TV, no one's ever dismantled power so softly." Meanwhile, Hannity kept his usual schedule, but something was different. His monologues grew more defensive, his jokes tighter, his eyes flicking to the camera less often. When a co-host tried to make a light comment about volume versus victory, he forced a smile that didn't last a second. The audience saw it. The spell was broken. At a community center in Dallas, a small crowd gathered for a local event where Crockett spoke days later. The applause began before she even reached the podium. She laughed, humbled, holding up her hands. "Y'all saw that clip, huh?" The room erupted. "Listen," she continued, "that moment wasn't about me winning. It was about reminding people, especially women, especially those told to be quiet, that you can hold your power without raising your voice." The crowd stood. The ovation rolled long after she finished. For a moment, it felt less like politics and more like belonging, as if the clip had connected people who'd forgotten what dignity looked like in public life. Online, fan edits kept coming. A cinematic version scored to orchestral strings. Another with captions in 20 languages. Across continents, viewers repeated the line, "You keep mistaking volume for victory," as both commentary and mantra, and beneath all the noise, something deeper was stirring. The moment had transcended Hannity entirely. It wasn't about a TV takedown anymore. It was about poise as resistance, calm as rebellion, truth as quiet power, but for Jasmine, this wasn't about viral fame, it was about something deeper. Days later, Jasmine Crockett sat in a quiet studio, no bright panels, no adversarial host, just a microphone, a mug of tea, and a single light above her. The interviewer leaned forward gently and asked the question that had been repeated 1,000 times online. "Congresswoman, when you said that line, when you told him he was mistaking volume for victory, were you trying to destroy him?" Crockett smiled, soft but certain. "No," she said. "I wasn't trying to destroy anyone. I just wanted the truth to be heard." Her voice carried no trace of triumph, only calm conviction. The clip that had set the internet ablaze suddenly felt smaller in the presence of her intent. "I've been in courtrooms where people's lives depended on how well I could stay composed," she continued. "You learn that raising your voice doesn't make your argument stronger. Listening does. Clarity does." The interviewer nodded, letting the silence stretch. In that stillness, Crockett's poise became its own sermon. This wasn't about a soundbite anymore. It was about grace under pressure, the strength it takes to hold steady in a world addicted to outrage. Across the country, Americans watched the interview replayed in snippets. A veteran from Detroit wrote on Facebook, "She didn't just win a debate, she reminded us what dignity looks like." A high school senior in Atlanta quoted her line in a graduation speech. For once, the political story of the week wasn't about who yelled the loudest, but who stayed calm the longest. The networks tried to spin it as rivalry, but people saw something pure, a reassertion of American values. The courage to face down arrogance without becoming it. The clarity to speak truth without venom. The service of standing firm for something greater than ego. Crockett spoke about those ideals with unguarded sincerity. "My parents taught me that silence isn't weakness," she said. "It's knowing when words matter. If I stayed quiet in that moment, the truth would have been buried under noise. So I chose my words carefully and I let them land." The interviewer asked, "Did you know it would go viral?" She laughed softly. "Of course not. You never do. But I hoped people would see what calm looks like when it refuses to bow to chaos." The world outside her studio remained as loud as ever, breaking news banners, social media storms, endless commentary. But somehow, her stillness seemed to cut through it all. Her face, serene and grounded, appeared on magazine covers with headlines like, "Grace wins the mic," and "The Power of Poise." Late-night hosts replayed her interview, less for laughs and more for admiration. The story had evolved from spectacle to parable, a reminder that truth doesn't always shout. In churches, classrooms, and living rooms, people repeated her quote as if it were scripture. "Volume is not victory." It became a quiet anthem for anyone who had ever been talked over, dismissed, or underestimated. In her restraint, people saw a reflection of their own struggle to stay composed in a noisy, divided world. Crockett ended the interview with a thought that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. "I think we forget that politics isn't theater. It's service. If we spend all our time performing, we stop listening. And when we stop listening, we lose the very thing that makes democracy work: empathy. Her interviewer asked, almost in a whisper, "So what's next for you?" She smiled again, that same composed smile that had stunned a nation. "I'm going to keep showing up. Keep speaking the truth. And maybe, keep reminding folks that strength doesn't always have to roar." The closing montage played footage of city streets, newsrooms, classrooms, faces lit by phone screens replaying her moment again and again. A young girl watched on a bus, whispering the line to herself. A father shared it with his son. Somewhere, even Hannity's team couldn't deny the cultural gravity of what had happened. Voiceover, low and steady, because in a world addicted to noise, silence delivered with purpose is the loudest sound of all. The screen faded to black, the echo of her words lingering like a final note in a symphony of chaos, and yet, this might only be the beginning. It began with one sentence and 7 words that turned a shouting match into a masterclass in composure. "You keep mistaking volume for victory, Sean." In that instant, Jasmine Crockett didn't just shut down a television host, she rewrote the script for what strength looks like in American politics. The headlines called it savage. The internet called it iconic. But at its core, it wasn't about destruction. It was about dignity. About a woman who refused to let arrogance define the tone of the conversation, who met hostility with calm, and turned chaos into clarity. As the clip echoed across millions of screens, something larger stirred beneath the surface. People weren't just cheering a takedown, they were recognizing a truth they'd been craving. That decency still has power. That grace under fire still matters. That the loudest person in the room isn't always the one who's right. The story of that night, Jasmine Crockett shuts down Sean Hannity with one savage line, will live on as more than a viral moment. It's a reminder that truth, when spoken with courage, outshines arrogance every single time. So if you believe that composure beats chaos, that facts still matter more than fury, and that dignity has a place in our politics, this is your movement. Subscribe, share, and stand with those who still believe that strength doesn't have to shout. Because when the truth speaks softly, the world still listens, and somewhere in a studio, under blinding lights and restless noise, another voice is waiting for its moment, the next calm before the storm, the next sentence that stops everything cold.